There are betrayals that hurt, and then there are the ones that change your life forever. The kind that makes you question everything you thought you knew about the people closest to you. Because 3 years ago, I discovered something I never thought was possible. My mother was having an affair, and the person she was having it with was my boyfriend. Even now, saying those words out loud still feels unreal. But the worst part? That wasn't even the moment my life fell apart. The worst part was how long it took me to realize what was happening. Because looking back now, the signs were everywhere. I just didn't see them. Or maybe I didn't want to. At the time, my life felt pretty normal. I had been dating my boyfriend for a few years. We met when I was finishing college. At first it was casual, just dinners, movies, late-night conversations. But over time, he became a big part of my life, and eventually, a big part of my family's life too. He came over for dinner all the time. My parents liked him, my dad got along with him, and my mom seemed to like him even more. Back then, I thought it was a good thing. You know how people say it's important for your family to like your partner? Well, mine definitely did. He was comfortable in our house, too comfortable. Sometimes he would stop by even if I wasn't there. At the time, I didn't think much about it. My parents always treated him like part of the family. So why would it be strange if he visited? Looking back now, that was the first mistake. Because once you trust someone, you stop questioning things. You assume everything is normal. You assume everyone is honest. And you definitely don't imagine that the two people you trust the most in the world could be lying to you. But eventually, small things started to happen. Things that felt strange. Things I couldn't quite explain. And at first, I ignored them. Because sometimes the truth is so uncomfortable, your brain refuses to see it. But the more time passed, the harder it became to ignore. Because the strange moments kept happening. And slowly, a horrible thought started forming in the back of my mind. A thought I immediately pushed away, because it felt impossible, disgusting even. There was no way my own mother and my boyfriend could ever cross that line, right? At least, that's what I kept telling myself. But the truth was already there. I just hadn't seen it yet. And when I finally did, everything changed. At first, it was just small things, little moments that felt off. The kind of thing you notice for a second and then immediately dismiss. Because when something feels uncomfortable, your brain tries to explain it away. And that's exactly what I did. For example, my boyfriend started showing up at my parents' house more often, even when I wasn't there. At first, I thought it was normal. My parents liked him. He was basically part of the family. So why wouldn't he stop by sometimes? But then my dad mentioned something one day, casually, like it wasn't a big deal. Oh yeah, he stopped by earlier today. That caught my attention, because I hadn't told him to go there. Still, I brushed it off. Maybe he just wanted to say hi. Maybe he needed something. Maybe it was nothing. But then it happened again and again. Soon it wasn't just occasional visits. He was there, a lot. Sometimes when I arrived, he was already there. Sometimes he had just left. And slowly, a strange feeling started creeping in. But that wasn't the only thing. There were also the silences. You know those moments when you walk into a room and the conversation suddenly stops? that started happening more often. I'd walk into the kitchen, and both of them would go quiet. Not naturally, not casually. The kind of silence that feels forced. So I'd ask something simple. "What were you guys talking about?" And every time, the answer was the same. "Oh, nothing. Nothing." Which is a very strange answer when it keeps happening. But even then, I still didn't want to think badly of them, because the alternative was too disturbing. Instead, I convinced myself I was imagining things, that I was overthinking, that I was being paranoid. But then there were the looks, and those were harder to ignore. Sometimes I'd notice them exchanging quick glances, just for a second. But there was something about those looks, something private, something secretive, the kind of look people share when they know something no one else does. And every time it happened, that horrible thought would flash in my mind again, just for a second. Then I'd push it away, because the idea that my own mother and my boyfriend could be involved in any way felt impossible. But once that thought appears, it doesn't go away easily. It just sits there, quietly, growing. And slowly, I started paying more attention, watching, listening, trying to convince myself I was wrong. But the more I noticed, the worse the feeling became. Because suddenly, every little interaction between them looked different. Every laugh, every conversation, every glance. And then one evening, something happened that made my stomach drop. Something small, but impossible to ignore. We were having dinner at my parents' house. My dad was talking about work, nothing unusual, just a normal family dinner. But while he was talking, I saw something. My mom looked at my boyfriend, and he looked back at her, just for a second. But the look they shared was not normal. It wasn't friendly. It wasn't casual. It was the kind of look people exchange when they share a secret. And in that moment, for the first time, I felt a real wave of fear. Because suddenly, that horrible thought didn't feel so impossible anymore. But even then, I still didn't know the truth. Not yet. Because the moment everything finally collapsed was still ahead of me. And when it happened, there was no way to pretend anymore. Once that thought entered my mind, it never really left. I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was imagining things, because the alternative was too disturbing. But something had already changed. I started paying attention, really paying attention, and the more I noticed, the worse the feeling became. Until one day, everything finally made sense. And honestly, I wish it hadn't. It happened on a completely normal afternoon. Nothing special about that day. I had finished work earlier than usual, so I thought I'd stop by my parents' house, maybe have dinner, maybe just say hi, something simple. But when I pulled into the driveway, I noticed something immediately. My boyfriend's car was there. That caught my attention, because I hadn't told him I was coming, and he hadn't told me he would be there. Still, I tried not to think too much about it. Maybe he just stopped by. Maybe he was visiting my dad. Maybe it was nothing. So I walked up to the door and let myself in like I always did. The house was quiet, too quiet. I called out, "Hello?" No answer, which was strange, because if someone was home, you'd normally hear something. Footsteps, a voice, something. Instead, there was just silence. Then I heard it. Voices, coming from upstairs. and immediately I recognized them, my mom and my boyfriend, talking quietly behind a closed door. Something about the tone of their voices made my stomach drop. It didn't sound like a normal conversation. It sounded private, intimate. The kind of quiet conversation people have when they think they're alone. And suddenly, that horrible thought came back again, stronger this time. I remember standing there at the bottom of the stairs, completely frozen, because part of me already knew. But another part of me was begging, please don't let this be what I think it is. Slowly, I started walking upstairs. Every step felt heavier, louder, like my body already knew something was wrong. When I reached the hallway, I saw the door, my parents' bedroom, closed, which was unusual. That door was almost never closed during the day, but the voices were definitely coming from inside. My heart was pounding so hard, I could barely hear anything else. For a moment, I just stood there, trying to convince myself to walk away, to leave, to pretend I had never come home, because deep down, I think I already knew what I was about to see. But eventually, I reached for the door and pushed it open. And in that exact moment, my entire world collapsed. Because the two people I trusted most in my life were standing there together, way too close. And the look on their faces when they saw me said everything. Panic, pure panic. No confusion, no surprise. Just the expression of two people who had just been caught. And in that moment, I understood the truth. My mother and my boyfriend had been having an affair. For a few seconds, no one said anything. The room felt completely frozen. My mom just stood there. My boyfriend looked like he had seen a ghost, and I remember feeling something strange. Not anger, not immediately, just disbelief. Because when something like that happens, your brain struggles to process it. It keeps asking the same question, is this actually real? I looked at both of them, waiting for someone to say something, waiting for someone to explain. But the silence just kept growing. And the longer it lasted, the more obvious the truth became. Finally, my boyfriend tried to speak. He said my name, quietly, like somehow that would fix the situation. But hearing my name come out of his mouth in that moment made everything worse, because suddenly the shock turned into something else. Anger. Real anger. I remember asking the most obvious question in the world. What the hell is going on? My mom immediately started talking, trying to explain, saying things like, "It's not what it looks like," which is honestly the most ridiculous sentence anyone can say in a moment like that, because it looked exactly like what it was, an affair, between my boyfriend and my own mother. Then my boyfriend started talking too, trying to explain, trying to justify it, something about how it just happened, something about how they never meant for it to go this far, the kind of excuses people make when they get caught. But the part that hurt the most was learning that it hadn't just happened once. This had been going on for a while. All those strange moments, all those awkward silences, all those looks I couldn't explain. Suddenly, they all made sense, because the entire time, while I was trusting both of them, they had been sneaking around behind my back, inside my own family. I don't remember every detail of what happened next, but I know I was yelling. I know I was crying. And I know that at some point, I just walked out of the house. I didn't stay to listen. I didn't stay to argue. I just left. And that was the moment everything ended. I broke up with my boyfriend immediately. No discussion, no second chances, no closure conversation. He was simply gone. But the harder part was my family. Because this wasn't just a relationship ending. This was my mother, the person who was supposed to protect me, the person who was supposed to care about me more than anyone else. And she crossed a line that can't really be undone. After that day, I cut contact with my parents. No visits, no calls, no holidays, nothing. For 3 years, we barely spoke. And slowly, I started rebuilding my life. New routines, new people, a new normal. It wasn't easy, but it was peaceful. Until recently. Because after 3 years of silence, my parents suddenly reached out. They said they wanted to talk. They said enough time had passed. They said the family needed to heal. They said they wanted me back in their lives. And now I'm stuck with a question I never thought I'd have to ask. After everything that happened, after the worst betrayal of my life, do I let them back into my life? Or do I keep that door closed forever? Because some betrayals don't just break relationships, they destroy the idea of family itself. And honestly, I still don't know what the right answer is.